Yay!
And yay! Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Yay.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. How is everyone tonight? I've seen Dana was here first. And I see, Steven's in and Hexen's here. Hi, honey. And Kay, hi. I meant to ask Hexen too. He's probably sitting naked on his bed now. But if we get any like voodoo or Santeria or anything like that questions, if he'd come on with us when we're done with Norse and Egyptian, in case we're still talking.
To do, he can throw on a t-shirt.
Right? Hi, Danny. Hi, Whale Song. Ayana, Donna. Witchy Woo is here. Good. I can't. That's one thing I have to say. I have to buy the StreamYard thing to see how many are on. It drives me crazy that we can't see how many. Where the heck is it?
26. 27 now.
Perfect. All right. So how is everyone tonight? Hopefully good. Everyone start out by clicking that like button for me so we can, while we're live, that gets us to more people and they suggest it to more people. So we have 3 special guests tonight. We have Sarana, who is going to talk to us about the Egyptian Pantheon, which I'm so excited because Sarana, I'm telling you, the fact that you have all this knowledge and the stuff that you post just fascinates me. How are you doing tonight?
Hi.
Doing okay? So I have listed everyone.
But everything is scratchy. Ugh,
so. It doesn't sound too bad on our end, at least not on my end. You guys hear her okay?
Well, at least you can hear me.
Yay. There we go. All right. So if you want to go ahead and start, Sarana, and then I'll try not to interrupt too much, but I will jump in with questions if we got questions.
Okay. So you started last time with the different sects of people who worship the Egyptian gods. So you got a lot of that right for sure. I'm really glad that you did your research on that because I was not too, I knew some basics that it was in the 70s, but I didn't know exactly where it started.
Very interesting that, they took that ancient stuff and brought it forward.
Mm-hmm. But, so some of the modern things that you can find, there's the...
Sarana, we are getting just some people asking you to speak up. I know I'm kind of a loud person, but get as close to the mic as you can and speak up as loud as you can for me.
Okay, better?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with the Isean group. That is a group that worships Isis, and sometimes they go along with the myths of Isis and Serapis or Osiris. And usually they're pretty Wiccan based. And then there's the Tamarin Wiccans that come from the some of the people that you mentioned before. And then there's the Kemetic Orthodox, the Tamarin Wicca, they just put the deities into the Wiccan cycle as best they can. And they usually a lot of them do follow Isis and Osiris very strongly because they are the most popular, most well-known deities because the Greeks wrote down so much about them. That's why we have so much about them.
Yes. I had read that. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's one of the reasons why they are popular because of the Greeks. So there's also the Kemetic Orthodox. They do have a unique belief system that revolves around Netsherd, which is a concept of like either the one God or the source of the creation, Netsherd. But that is not ancient Egyptian in origin. That is something that is their thing.
Okay. No kidding.
Mhm.
I
And
don't
then
know if
there's
I
the
read that, but that's
there's
interesting. Thank
another
you.
group. The next group is one that you could have some very positive experiences from, and you can have some very negative experiences from. They are the Afrocentrist group. These are the people that group ancient Egyptian beliefs into Yoruba and the other African traditions instead of as a Middle Eastern religion.
Oh, yes. Yes,
So,
yes.
so if you are white and you want to worship the Egyptian gods, you might have some conflict with them if you
Right.
come across them. So,
I have heard that anyways,
but
as a whole, that they are not a very welcoming pantheon if you didn't grow up in that tradition.
mhm. Now there is no major tradition of this that has been passed down that is still alive, and if it is in Egypt itself, and it is there. Or I do know that some tribes and other tribes have similar practices from ancient Egypt, but there's no lineage. This is you have to pick in pieces at it. And the Arabs, the Coptics, and the actual descending Egyptians are kind of upset about all of this because they feel like these people that feel like they want their origins back are trying to take ours. You know?
But because unless they're actually in Egypt, they're all kind of taking what they have read from ancient stuff and applying it as best they can, then really it's kind of silly for them to try to say that theirs is the only way or anything like that, right? That was the impression that I got in reading about that it really kind of started in the 70s, that I thought, well, good, because then hopefully they wouldn't be able to, everyone would. They do that in regular paganism and stuff too. So, but it's nice that we should be able to stand up for, as long as we're doing our research and we're reading and that kind of thing, that we should be able to stand up and say, it's okay. We can, take what we have and base what we know on what we've read.
Mm-hmm. And even in ancient Egypt, they would adopt other cultures into the culture. It was a very open culture. And they would bring in the nobles from other like allied countries and from the countries that they have conquered. They would bring them in and teach them.
Great.
If you were a
Yeah.
highborn in Nubia, after they had conquered, you were able to come up, and come up and learn in the temples. So there was no discrimination with race at all.
Great.
There was no. It was a very open culture, and I mentioned in the chat last time that they adopted Astarte into their religion, especially once the cherry. Like, not only did they have people coming and going from that place and living in Egypt, they also and other conquered areas that place from Mesopotamia. They also the horses. That was the big deal because horses are not native to Egypt.
Oh, right.
They came in later, and so they became so important that they adopted Astarte as a warrior goddess.
Nice. From the Greek.
So she was the keeper of the horses, and she was said to be a daughter of Ra.
Ah. So there is, you know,
And the wife-
definitely
and the wife of
adoption
Seth,
from other
so-
cultures. That's good.
Yes, Egypt adopted a lot from other cultures as well. So it was very eclectic in that way. And not only did they adopt from other cultures, but they adopted within their own.
Yeah, I know. I was looking at, when you look at the ancient culture, there's, you know, several different waves of different gods and goddesses, and it, you know, depended on, you know, what time period you were looking at.
All the way up to the all the way back to the early period, right at what we know, the earliest that we have of the Narmer palette. And there's a few things before that. After the Narmer palette, it's considered dynastic, and before that, it's pre-dynastic. So there's very little pre-dynastic that we have available. But there's still quite a bit of evidence, but there's not much. But we do know that Narmer conquered the local tribes, and he united the upper and lower kingdoms. So then that is when the Nile became part of the trade center, and that's where all of that came in. And then each pharaoh that took over basically put his main deity as the head. And over time, that eventually became Ra as the major deity, and Ra as Atum Ra was able to embody all of the creator deities of all the different cities and gnomes and tribes. So he would travel around to each gnome and perform ceremonies and go into the temples all throughout the year.
So now, did they keep Ra from then on? Ra was the main god mostly from then on, correct?
Yes, but not from the Narmer palette, because there's a lot of old deities back then as well, as like Min. Min was associated with the pharaoh too, and he was mentioned on the Narmer palette.
And Ra and Amun Ra, that's two different gods, right? Or is that the same?
Yes, Amun and Ra are two different deities. That is a composite deity.
So
that is one of the unique things about ancient Egyptian religion, is that it goes eclectic far, to the point where the deities are so fluid that they can become one with one another regardless of sex or location of that deity, become a single composite deity.
It's
called a syncretic deity.
Yes. Super interesting. That is like the ultimate eclectic mix, when you can
So that's kind of mind as an eclectic. When you're looking at it from that point of view, it's like, oh my God, they went so far as to combine the deities into one way.
No kidding. That is definitely the ultimate eclectic mix. Well, I feel better for being eclectic then, because I always, before, when I first started working, like I said, I know I've said before that, oh, now I have you on, I can get pronunciations. So Mayat, which is what I've called her forever. And you said that pronunciations are, nobody has the real one anyways, or not many people know the actual pronunciations anyways.
No, because they don't have vowels in their writing system. So whatever works for you.
Yay! Perfect. It goes just along with my thing.
So, I mean, like if you're working with them And as a religion, it would probably be, I would go by what they tell you to come.
Right, exactly.
But I mean, even Horus, that's his Greek name. His original name is Heru or Horu, some people say. Heru or Horu.
No kidding.
Mm.
Super interesting.
So
That's great.
yeah.
That's great. Do we have any questions yet, guys?
So they worship deities by region and by nome or city. And so they would have usually the most popular thing was triads. They would have a triad where it's usually a mother, a father, and a child. There's other ones as well where it's two goddesses and a god, such as Isis, Nephthys, and Osiris, or to go with their older names, Aset, Neberhet, and Asar. There's also like there's matriarchs like Neith, where she was the ultimate creatrix, and there's also creator gods such as Ra, Atum, and Ptah, I believe. Yes, Ptah. And there's also
great.
multiple creation myths. There's multiple different creation myths. Multiple. I have a few here. I don't have the actual stories, but just the basics. And
Yeah, you run us down one that you particularly like.
that I particularly like. That's hard to say. I like a lot of them for different reasons. There's the Agoad, who are the primeval beings that existed before creation. Nu and Naunet, Hu and Hauket, Kek and Kauket, Amun and Amanuet. If you notice, the ET, if you know anything about ancient Egyptian writing, the ET is usually for the feminine. So it's pairs, they're couples. Nu and Naunet are the primeval waters from which everything came. Hu and Hauket represent infinity. Kek and Kauket represent darkness, and Amun and Amanuet represent that which is hidden. But a lot of documentaries like to point out that, you know, the forces that existed before, like how they believe the Big Bang happened and how the four forces got disrupted. And that's what created everything. So there's this myth has a lot to do. This myth, they usually represent, oh my goodness. Mercury retrograde, I cannot speak.
That's all right. We're all thrilled here.
This myth that the ancients knew what they were talking about. They knew something because
And they had
how
a lot of
this part is very
scientific
similar
stuff
to
came
that.
from them.
And when they converge, the myth is that they all converge and create everything.
A lot of astrology, a lot
of
of scientific exploration, that kind of thing. A lot of that comes from them too. As well as stuff like what am I trying to say? Where they bring the water in. What the heck is that called? Oh my goodness. Yep, Mercury retrograde. Come on, you guys, for the crop. Irrigation, thank you. Which also came somewhat from the Greeks too, or I don't know if maybe the Greeks took it from the Egyptians. I'm just showing some of the
Yes,
cards.
one of the most popular ones that I have written here is from Heliopolis, and that's where Atum created Tefnut and Shu from his sneeze, or from spitting and vomiting.
Yes, yay! Just what we want our gods to come from.
And even Tefnut, who is the moisture, her name means to spit. But it's various meanings depending on the translation.
That's great.
Hey, Mama.
And then from
Jamie
those
wants
two
to know
came
what deck you
Geb
have.
and Geb and Newt, and then from them the four main deities. And they had a 3C, and going into that myth that you described, they had a 3-season year, and they followed the Nile. Some people argue that they did not have an agricultural calendar, but they very much did. It was based on agriculture, and it was based on the pharaoh and his life.
Yeah.
So,
which of course was a huge deal.
So for a long time, it was a 360-day year, and it was very much on point with that, and they followed that system. And then it changed because the stars changed, because the star Sirius didn't rise at the same time. And so they had to make up for those extra 5 days, because our universe isn't an exact perfect circle. It varies and it changes over time. So they had to make up for those changes, and that's where that myth came from. That's where those extra 5 days came from.
Exactly. And, we end up having to have leap year and all kinds of stuff to try to fix what we've done too. So nobody's perfect, I guess.
Another interesting thing that some people don't know is that Caesar was actually crowned as the living Horus. And our modern calendar comes from Julius Caesar.
That makes sense. For sure. That is great.
Super interesting. And there's another creator deity, Ptah, who is said to have spoke a being with his words, which is where we get the myth that magic needs spoken word, specific incantations, because that comes from Ptah, and it comes from ancient Egypt and the hieroglyphs and the hieratic scripts as well. So they believe very much in the spoken word, and that is what modern Heika practitioners follow too, that they speak and enunciate everything correctly.
That is great.
And of course, change for what they could do.
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm actually curious, Sarana.
So
how long have you been practicing?
So that
and
also
studying?
creates another divide. There's the Kemetic Reform group who want to change things to fit the modern mind, and the Kemetic Reconstructionists who want to make things as close to the original as they can get.
So they're kind of at odds a little. Pat had a question for you, Sarana.
I was just curious, how long have you...
It's really scratchy. I can barely understand.
I was just wondering, how long have you been
Try
practicing or studying the Egyptian path?
How long, honey? How long have you been studying the path of the Egyptians? Can you hear us?
I've always been interested. I've always been researching. So, but 6 years since 7 years ish. Yeah, 7 years since I started specifically working on it. just reaching for fun.
And we have Busy Bee says, are you familiar with the open mouth ceremony? All I know is that it was performed so the dead could speak in the afterlife.
No, I have not studied that much with about the ceremonies, but it's very, very difficult to come across. Not all translations are in English. A lot of them are in Arabic or in French.
And the
And
priest,
a lot of the
isn't it
ceremonies
the
are very
priest of the Egyptian
difficult
culture?
to reproduce because we don't have a modern version of it.
Exactly.
Like,
I was just going to say the priests of the Egyptian culture didn't really share that very much.
Ceremonial magic, I do not do that specifically.
Right.
But the ancient Egyptians did have a major influence on ceremonial magic for sure. Because the cult of Isis and Osiris in Greece, and then in Rome, and especially during the Renaissance, really caught hold of the imagination of people.
And Sarana,
that really led to the mystery schools. So,
isn't it their priests, the Egyptian priests, or I don't know what they called them, but who did the magic workings? They kind of kept what they were doing close to their heart. They didn't really share very much about how they did their ceremonial stuff, anyways, right? I think what I've read, anyways, it's hard to find a lot of the ceremonial stuff because they didn't really share a whole lot of how they did that.
It's really scratchy on my end.
Oh, I'm sorry, honey. Danny wants to know if you have any references about the Daughter of Anubis.
Maybe put it like in the private chat. Or is there live comments? I might be able to see that. The Daughter of Anubis, is that the one?
Yeah.
The Daughter of Anubis. I'm not sure if he had a daughter. I'm not sure if it's his daughter or his wife. There is another deity who is a serpent deity. And I think she might be the Daughter of Anubis. Or at least in one myth. Because the daughter of one deity could be the daughter of another deity in a completely different myth.
Right, that's true. Or sister or wife or both.
But she is said to be one of the ladies of the West, and she holds the urn of like the vessel of water and pours it for the dead. If she's the one that I'm thinking of.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge with us.
Oh boy. All right. I do have a list. Well, speaking of the deities, I do have a list of triads, if anyone's interested.
That I would love to have that posted in the Facebook group.
Huh?
Let's post that list in the Facebook group. We're coming up on a half an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because we're coming up on a half an hour, and I want to make sure we get to Pat and Lea Lynn too. But I so appreciate you coming on. This was really interesting, and it was great to hear some of your knowledge.
Okay.
All right.
But yeah, my phone started to die. It's the being on the live is taking the battery right out of it.
Oh no. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarana. I
So that's
really
why it's
appreciate
shaking
it.
a lot because I'm holding it.
Aw, you're great. That was really great. I appreciate it so much. Okay. So I did want to quickly, before we start, with Pat and Lea Lynn, Lady Blind Wolf wanted to know about cultural appropriation. And that's such a big topic, but I will tell you that it depends on what you're talking about. For me, cultural appropriation is a problem if you're trying to benefit from a culture that you really had nothing to do with. So, like if you were to go to Arizona and try to sell turquoise on the side of the road where the Native Americans do. Or, you were trying to benefit from a culture that you had nothing to do with. As far as, and this is just for me, we'll get into it. We're going to talk about ethics coming up here next week. But as far as worshiping or following deity, if you look at most of the cultures and most of the pantheons that we're talking about, most of them, we cannot say for sure how they would have celebrated their religion in ancient times. We have some guesses, we have some hints, we have, a little bit of tablets here and there, but we are really kind of all making it up in modern time. I would say, from the 1600s on. For some, and then some much more modern, like the Egyptian Pantheon really started in the 1970s. So there isn't a whole lot of cultural appropriation as far as just following deity and calling on different deities in order to work with them. The exception to that, or one of the exceptions to that, and Hexam would really know a lot more about that, is you really have to be careful when it comes to stuff like Santeria, where they have followed their religious traditions, like down from generations and generations ago. And they sometimes will have a really hard time pulling people who were not born into that tradition into it. So other than that, though, most pantheons in the pagan spectrum of things, I would say it is not culturally appropriating to venerate and to what's the word I'm looking for? To honor those gods and goddesses and that walk, because for another thing, you don't know what your past life was. So you may have come from that tradition at some point. As long as you're not trying to benefit financially and stuff from another culture that is actively, working on things right now, I think it would. Lady Blind Wolf, absolutely. Just like everything else in every religion, there are crazy idiot people. Back up. Not idiot. I didn't mean idiot at all. Kind of, a little, but not really. There are extremists in every religion. But I don't listen to the extremists on most sides anyways, because I just don't agree with that. If I'm not trying to take a culture and water it down, and I'm honoring the traditions that I have studied and tried to learn as much as I could, then I'm not going to listen to the extremist part. What do you guys think about that? Do you have a thought process on that yourselves?
Unfortunately, like you said, every religion, every pantheon, every path will have you do it my way or you're doing it wrong, end of story. There is no bending to this. which it makes absolutely no sense, because if you look at the progression across all the different pantheons, all the different paths, there are similarities in every one of them. Oh, the great God in the Christian religion is, in the Norse Pantheon, Uthin, the All-Father, the father of all humans and gods. There are those points in almost every religion. There is it's Zeus in the Greek religion. He is the god, the top god. It's going to be in every religion. You're going to have the extremists, the jihadis in the Muslim. They are the extremist branch of the Muslim religion. Not all Muslims. I know many Muslims who are very wonderful to spend time and talk to. And I know many of them who would be more than willing to sit down and talk to you like we're talking, having a civil, valid discussion without an argument.
Absolutely. And MA, I wanted to put your comment up here because I agree. There are a few exceptions. I was saying Santeria is one of them. Native American is another one because they have brought their culture with them all the way up through time. And there are things, if a Native American person or the Native American culture would like us to use a different word than smudge, I don't have a problem with that. I totally agree that what I am, if I was to say I'm going to smudge something, then what I'm talking about is different because I didn't grow up learning their traditions. So I can say cleanse and I can, use my version of that. Absolutely. And because Native American is one of the cultures that brought their religion and their workings and their practices up from the beginning of time up through this time period, they are one of the exceptions to that rule. Like I said, a lot of pantheons anyways, when we're talking about this kind of practice, a lot of pantheons try to do gatekeeping and say, you can only practice if you are like anything. You can only practice if you have real witches bloodline in your heritage and your, all that crap. But because we can only guesstimate at what their practices would have been most of the time, then to me, it's just not it's a non-issue for most of the pantheons anyways that we're talking about. As long as I'm trying to honor that, and I have to say too, I'm very careful when I am honoring a god or a goddess. I'm doing my research. I'm not just saying, I think I'm going to deal with Thor, and you know what, he looks just like what's his face from TV, and I don't know anything about him, but boo, he's hot, and so I'm going to call out to Thor. That I wouldn't do that. But, if you are reading up on what the mythology is and you're that kind of thing, and you're honoring and venerating that culture and that deity, I don't think that should be an issue. But that's me.
And yes, there are going to be extremists in every path. By the way, Norse too. Norse pagans definitely have an extremist side. In fact, there's a negative connotation that comes along with calling yourself Asatru now, because the extremists have taken it over.
Yeah. Lady Blind Wolf, there's no way to prove 100% if we had a whole lot of different bloodlines. Although I will tell you, DNA wise, there is certain, I can't remember which one it is, but there is a way to actually go back and see if your DNA comes back to one of those witches. But I'm not interested in that because, again, that's just gatekeeping.
Yeah.
I do think that there is such a thing as cultural appropriation, but I don't think that it is what we're talking about when we're talking about pantheons in specific and honoring the religions and the pagan traditions that we're looking at.
And I think it's a bit of a line there. Mind it, pay attention to it, don't cross it. But it is the line between researching the deities, not just deciding that you're going to take it and make it what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Not just deciding you're going to sell stuff under that label to make money off of something that isn't yours. That's where you cross into appropriation. But if you are doing the research, you are practicing the parts of the religion that are open to outsiders, not trying to practice things that are specifically for people who are part of a closed religion like Santeria,
Right.
then you're fine.
Yep.
Back to Norse. There are certain traditions within Norse paganism that I can't practice because I'm not part of a Norse pagan group, a actual organized group. Thus, I would never ever give myself titles like Gothi, because that is something you have to go through certain training, certain rituals to earn that title.
Exactly. Jackie, I just wanted to mention real quick the smudge sticks. It's less about the sage sticks and where you get them from, and more about being taught from an early age what smudge means. The Native Americans have said that to use the word smudge is to take what they believe that is, and the fact that they pass that tradition down to each generation, and how to do it and what they call on and all that. It's a very specific ritual situation. And so they have asked that those of us who have not been born into that tradition and taught that from a Native American culture, that we used a different word for it, because we don't, when we say smudge, we're not thinking the same thing as what they have for generations taught their traditions to be doing. So it has less about the sage part and more about the traditions of what to smudge means.
However, I would recommend, yes, if you're buying an endangered plant like Palo Santo or certain kinds of sage, please do buy it from the people who are trying to grow it.
Yes.
And not necessarily from a corporation.
Yes, yeah. Please, please, please. Yes. Exactly.
By the way, a quick 2-second aside. Shauna keeps posting her like and share so squirrels get their acorns. And she found this little guy today.
Oh.
So the last person who liked this video, here's the little squirrel that got that acorn.
Oh, he's so cute. Oh, I have my whole little shelf of squirrels now. I love that, you guys. A whole bunch of our viewers, that when I get my little packages from people, I'm getting all little squirrels. I have my whole shelf of squirrels now. I just love it. All right. Go ahead, guys. You want to start off? I don't know if you have like a thing prepared, or you know me, I can ask questions till doomsday, but I'll let you guys talk first.
You go first, Lea Lynn. Well, I figure because we can start with you, one, because you're going to be using the more common pronunciations, and also I am doing the Tale of Ragnarok. So that is the end.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, Mama, you want to ask a question?
Well, I would say, can you, I don't know if you guys can explain the differences. There is a difference between the now as I can say it right 12 times and then not say Asratu.
Asatru.
Asatru. Thank you. Yeah. Between Asatru and like a regular Norse Pantheon, and there's like 3 or 4 in there, right?
There are several different branches of Norse paganism, so to speak. And you can practice Norse paganism and belong to one of several groups. One of them is Asatru. Be careful around them. They've kind of gotten absorbed by white nationalists. There is Thorsatru, which tends to be more centered around restoring old practice. It's as close as you can get to the way that Vikings would have practiced. There is another group, and I can never remember how to pronounce theirs, but they actually worship more of the Vanir, versus which are the more earth-based personifications of nature deities within the Norse Pantheon, because you have separate groups within the gods. You have the Vanir, you also have the Aesir. Aesir are Thor, Odin, the ones who you usually think of living in Valhalla, or in, why am I blanking on names now? Asgard, thank you.
Absolutely. And so it really, and heathenism is technically a separate one too, right?
Yes, and heathenism is another group within Norse paganism. Again, be careful around groups that call themselves heathen. Make sure they're not also calling themselves Asatru, because if they are, again, white nationalists, be careful.
I know, which, is sad, because I will tell you, if they are true Asatru, I have seen many, many Asatru groups come out and say, hey, don't lump us in all together, because a lot of the white nationalist kind of people have tried to pull that from them. And if they are true Asatru, they don't believe that shit either.
Right. And I'm not saying that all people who practice Asatru or Asatru, or who call themselves by that label or call themselves a heathen, and are white nationalists at all. I have actually used the word heathen to describe myself, and I am by no means, by any definition, a white nationalist. No, never, will not. And I've used the word heathen. And so these are not words that inherently mean white nationalists. They're words that have been co-opted partially by white nationalists.
Yes, yes, yes. And I guess really not that they're not all interesting, but the interesting part that I was really excited to hear is, of course, the mythology. Some of the mythology, especially of the Norse Pantheon, of all pantheons. All pantheons have these incredible stories in mythology, which I did want to touch on and just let people know. Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. Beauteous.
Yes.
That our homework, part of the homework from this week, was specifically to talk about like a mythological story that you remember from childhood that you really liked, and to give me an idea what that is. And guys, I want to just touch on your homeworks. I am reading through homeworks as quick as I can. I'm still behind, but although I'm giving some to some of our, admins here and stuff too, but I'm reading every single one of them. And I want to make sure you guys understand, I put a whole lot of work into this. I put hours and hours into each video that I do for you guys. And I want to make sure that you guys are really thinking about these questions. I don't expect you to spend hours on it, although it's not out of the realm of possibility that you could do that. But I do want you to spend more than 10 minutes on answering these questions, because I want to know that you are committed and you know that this is the path you want to walk. Before I tell you I'm going to dedicate you to this path, I want to make sure that you know that this is actually the path that you want to be walking. So just keep that in mind. I expect to hear a little bit more than, I like some of the Greek mythology.
Oh, no, you got an entire essay from me on mythology. Yes. Yeah, and in fact, now that I've pulled it up, I have one of the ones I sent you was how Sleipnir happened. And for those who don't know, Sleipnir is Odin's 8-legged horse. By the way, he's also Loki's child.
Yep, and is where Santa's reindeer came from.
Mhm.
You know, the 8 reindeer came from the 8-legged horse. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So, to give you a brief summation of this story, an unnamed builder arrives in Asgard and tells the gods that he can build them a huge wall to protect them from their enemies. In exchange, he asks for the sun and moon and Freya's hand in marriage. Freya being the most beautiful goddess in the Norse Pantheon, goddess of love. Everybody wants to marry her. Literally, in every other myth. Loki uses his silver tongue and convinces them to accept the offer, but only if the builder can build it in 3 seasons, or before winter arrives, with no help from any other man. The man asks if he can use his horse. The gods agree. This is no ordinary horse. This is a massive stallion that can move twice as many rocks as his master, making the formerly impossible task of completing the wall before winter entirely doable. With only a few days left before they have to pay up, the gods come together to address the fact that they might have to actually give the giant the sun, the moon, and Freya. They conclude that this was Loki's plan to begin with, so he needs to figure out a way out. That night, as the builder and his horse continue to work, a mare appears, distracting the stallion. The builder loses an entire night of work chasing after his horse, who is chasing after Loki in the form of a mare. Said stallion catches Loki. They do the thing that produces the children, and Loki, he disappears for a while. Meanwhile, the gods figure out that this builder is in fact one of the giants, and so Jotun, and Thor smashes his head in instead of paying him. Several months later, Loki returns with a colt that has 8 legs. He then tells the gods, don't ask where it came from. Here you go, Odin, you can have the horse.
What did I see here? Is that one reason why Loki is constituted the god for PTSD because of all of his traumas?
I would think he would be good for that, because that god has been through a lot of trauma.
Yes, he has. Now he has, contributed to that trauma most of the time, but
yeah, he does cause a lot of his own trauma, but some of his trauma is caused by associations with people like Odin and Thor.
Love it, love it, love it. I have to say to me, the Norse Pantheon has some of the most hilarious myths. If you have an afternoon or 3 or 4. Look up some of the Norse myths because they are hilarious.
Go look up either of my 2 favorites that I constantly reference. The time Thor went fishing. It's hilarious. Thor catches the world serpent. He doesn't want to let it go. He wants to kill it. Or go look up the time that Thor, Loki, and a couple of random kids it scared the crap out of a giant.
Yes.
By the way, they scared the crap out of a giant by failing all of his challenges and still being terrifying.
Yes, yes, yes. And Maya says, when they dress Thor as a woman and have him marry. Yes, like that.
Yes, the time that Mjolnir is stolen.
And Estelle, yes, it's perfectly okay if you write paragraphs. I love reading the paragraphs. That's why it's taken me a while to get through it. But I would rather read paragraphs because then I know you have an understanding of what we're talking about.
Here you go. Here's what my homework looks like that I turned into Mama Squirrel.
That's right. And I don't mind at all.
That was one question that I just scrolled through.
That's right. That's right. Pat, you're up, Victor.
All right. So I have gone through and made a abridged version. This is the Tale of Ragnarok, which is the tale of the end times. Now, I abridged this quite a bit myself because if I were to actually tell you the entire story, we would probably be here for about 45 minutes just for this story. It is a very in-depth, detailed story, but it is also a very good story to explain. And like I said, I've pulled from like 4 or 5 different retellings of the story to try and combine it into one. I will stumble a little bit. I am going to try. I've been working my best on learning the traditional old pronunciations. I will drop a link for one of my favorite YouTube people about Norse, and that is Jackson Crawford. He is actually a professor of Scandinavian studies specializing in Norse mythology. His work is amazing. But so
his version of the the Havamal.
Havamal, yes.
Is amazing.
He has a translated version and a translated copy of the Havamal, which his version has the original text on one page, and on the facing page, his English translation with notes. And I am planning on getting that soon, hopefully, because I really would like to have it. You can get it in ebook and everything, but I want the paper copy.
Heck yeah. And let me just say before you start, there's people that are saying that all they have is their phone to do their homework on. Guys, you also can write stuff out and take a picture of it and email it to Pat, who then will give it to me. You don't have to just do that form, although it's easier if you can do the form. But if you want to actually go some more in depth, I have no problem with you taking a picture as long as as long as it's a clear picture that I can then blow up and read some. I don't have any problem at all with that. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
I just dropped Jackson Crawford's YouTube. He also has an entire playlist series on how to pronounce the different names and terms and words in Old Norse, which he has reconstructed. It's not the modern Icelandic language. This is as close as he can get it to how they spoke in the 500s and 600s.
Just awesome.
And occasionally you will hear me speak with different sound, say words in different sounds, because I do try to pronounce them closer. I'm not very good.
Just like me with the Celtic, I'll remember it for a while and then I'm like, ah, shit. How do you say it again? Yeah. But yeah.
And I will, after the video, I will copy this and post my copy of the tale into the Facebook group, so you guys can actually read it also. I have done it in writing this with the proper, or as proper as I can get, of the different characters for pronunciation. So here we go. The tale of Ragnarok sets out a series of signs that define the end of times. The first sign is Fimmvöldir, which is a winter that will last the length of 3 winters with no break in between, covering the land in snow and bringing an end to law and civilization as we know it, reverting to the worlds to a state of survivalism, where brother will kill brother. Only 2 humans will survive those wars, Lif and Liprastir. It is their descendants who will repopulate Midgard. A red rooster called Fjardan will crow, warning the Jotun, or frost giants. Then the rooster Golinkambi will crow, alerting the heroes in Valhalla. Finally, a third rooster will call at the bars of Hel, signifying the dead that Ragnarok has begun. The great wolf Skar will finally catch and devour the sun, and his brother Hati will eat the moon. Suddenly, with a great shattering of the earth, a quake will free Fenrir, who will race across the earth, his lower jaw dragging the ground and his upper eating the stars and clouds. That same earthquake will summon Jomungandr from the depths of the sea, causing the water to erupt over the land and creating great waves that will release the ship Nagarfar, which is a ship made for the nails of dead humans, and carrying the Jotun to sail towards Vigdar, where the final battle of Ragnarok will be fought. Another ship will then set sail from Hel, captained by Loki, who has broken free of his bonds. The sky will then split in twain, and the sons of Muspel, the fire giants, led by Surt, wielding a sword brighter and hotter than any sun, will march forth. The god Heimdall, who has been watching all of this from his post at the edge of the Bifrost Bridge in Asgard, will then blow the Gjallarhorn, waking the god from their slumber and calling them to battle. The fierce combination of the dead, the Jotun, the Muspel, will all form one great army to fight against the Aesir and the residents of Valhalla, the Einherjar, those bravest of warriors who have been chosen by the Valkyr to stand beside Uthin. The great battle will begin with Uthin stepping forward to battle Fenrir, a fierce battle that Fenrir will ultimately win. The death of Uthin will enrage his son Vidar, who will step forward and kill Fenrir. He has had one shoe crafted from all of the scraps of leather that human shoemakers have ever discarded for this purpose alone. With that shoe, he will hold Fenrir, mouth open, and drive his sword through the wolf's throat, killing him. While this is happening, another wolf, Garm, will be doing battle with the god Tyr. These two will also kill each other in battle. The god Freyr will battle Surt. They too shall slay each other. Thor will then step forward and do battle with Jormungandr, both age-old foes. Thor will succeed in slaying the serpent, but in the battle will be covered in enough poison from Jormungandr that he will take 9 steps away and then fall dead. Through all of this, Heimdall and Loki will be warily facing each other across the battlefield, knowing that the final battle is now. They will fight valiantly, ultimately falling beside each other mortally wounded. With a laugh, Loki will tell Heimdall that even in death he has won and destroyed everything. Heimdall will then softly sigh and say, "You have won this battle, but not the war. You have fought well, but there are still 2 humans alive. They have been hiding in Yggdrasil, and all of the hopes of the future are with them." As both breathe their last, the world will sink into the sea to be cleansed. After the water recedes, Leif and Leifrasir will cautiously come from their hiding place and begin a new life upon Midgard. Vali, Baldur, Hoda, Modi, and Magni will come from their hiding spots in Asgard. They will look down upon Midgard, watching life begin again. Vidar will glance aside and see something in the grass. Upon closer inspection, he notices that it is a chess piece carved in the likeness of Uthin. The gods search the area and find enough pieces to create a full chess set and settle down to play chess with each other while they take up the mantle of guardians of Midgard. And like I said, this was a compilation of multiple different tellings. Many tellings have when Heimdall and Loki kill each other, that's just the end. There is no reset, there is no restart. But there are also tales that go beyond where I stopped and goes into Modi and Magni, who are Thor's children, how they go down to Midgard to help rebuild. So there are many different tales. That's just a kind of a compilation.
So good. So good. I just love, love, love.
And as we pointed out with the Egyptian Pantheon, and similarly, we are piecing together what we have. And yes, a lot of Norse culture has been erased. It's really hard to find things that we haven't already translated that are Norse. So you're going to have limited amounts of resources. Also, we have very limited understanding of their alphabet. Again, we have people who are literally still trying to translate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, like Jackson Crawford has said repeatedly, we have nothing written from the time of the Vikings. The closest stories and tellings that have been recovered and saved were from the 13 to 1600s, which was 6+ hundred years past the end of the Viking era. So even those stories, we can't verify that they were true and that they were the same stories told at the time.
So it is very much a reconstruction and a modern rebuilding of old beliefs.
Yep.
But we do have to sort of piece together and fill in the blanks where we can, because a lot of the time we just don't have the information.
Right. And again, though, just like the Egyptian culture, what we do have some things that were written down from when the Saxons invaded into Britain and into the Celtic lands. And some of their monks started writing some of the history that they learned from them. So some of the earliest stuff that we have from the Viking culture is not from the Vikings at all, but from the monks who were the ones that could write.
Which is actually something I have pointed out before when talking about Norse mythology on my channel, is that sometimes, that a lot of what you're going to find, your original source was Christianized because it was being written down by Christians.
Yes. Yes.
And
exactly.
Pay attention to your sourcing, because if you're getting it from a Christianized source to begin with, similar to a conversation that we had in the Facebook group earlier about someone and having a very Christianized view of certain deities. That's what a lot of Christian invading cultures did, is they would demonize and Christianize these pagan deities. So Loki became cast as this dark figure who was evil, not chaos. When Loki, he is, yes, sometimes he does things we would characterize as evil, but he's actually more chaos than evil.
Like most men. I mean, come on.
And that actually goes back to something that Lea Lynn and I were talking about, was brought up in the Facebook group, and we're going to try and find a time on Lea Lynn's channel to do a little panel like this, discussing the devil versus good versus evil, heaven, hell, and all of that, as opposing from the Christian beliefs to the Norse and pagan beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a great study. If you've ever done, I know Lea Lynn has too, if you've ever done a study that, kind of goes through some of the pagan pantheons and the umbrellas that it has gone through, it's super interesting.
But also, even because I came from a Christian background, if you strip away that Christian lens from the story of Lucifer, the devil, whatever you want to call him, you can actually find a story in there that looks a lot like a regular underworld god, like Hades or Hell, and I do mean Hel, Loki's kid, the one from Norse mythology.
By the way, that's Hell. That's one of the depictions I have in one of my cards of Hell.
Mm-hmm.
So we did have a question for both of us up here. Let me scroll back up because I just saw it. Let's see, where was it? There it is. Sherry Bug asked, question for Pat and Lea Lynn. The show Vikings, do you feel that the way they worship the gods in the show is anywhere close to what is available? I have not watched very much of the Vikings show. I've watched a few episodes. I do know that that was one of the shows that Jackson Crawford had a big hand in as a consultant. So chances are, as best as we can tell currently, that it is pretty accurate.
I would have to give the same answer because I haven't really watched very much of it. I've maybe watched 2 or 3 episodes out of order. So I don't really get to give a review yet.
Well, I will
but
say
I do know that a couple
the first 3 seasons, I think I watched, and I think it was excellent. And I think it did show a lot of, the way that they practiced or what we believe is the way that they practiced then. Super interesting. Now, I will say there was a whole thing about sacrifices, and that did happen. And I tried to, I did get a question or a statement in some of the homework. A couple people talked about how we're not really talking about the sacrifices and stuff from some of the pantheons. That's true. Back in ancient times, some of these pantheons took what they believed was offerings to the gods and what they believed those gods wanted. And there was some things of, like human sacrifices, and there was lots of animal sacrifices. And to be honest with you, I do touch on it once in a while, but I don't focus on that because to me that I don't want to, nobody today thinks that we should still be doing that. So I just kind of, yes, there was that. And that is in the history of, or what we think is, and again, a lot of this is speculation, but in what we think is the history of some of these pantheons. But I don't focus on it because that nobody today thinks that we should still be doing that. So I'm not gonna focus on what I believe to be stuff that is ancient history, literally. Yeah.
And while it's fine to acknowledge that it happened, let's also not pretend that it's certain other religions are any better, because they're not. They also did animal and human sacrifice. And if you really want me to get blunt about it, one of them is literally he's centered around a human sacrifice to himself.
Yep, that's true. That's true. Absolutely. All right, questions? Any questions? Need to make pantheons like yes. And that's one of the things, Steph, that that I was going to talk about a little bit is this, because we're doing this as part of the self-initiation, self-dedication classes. I did want to touch on a whole bunch of different pantheons, but as far as really in-depth, I think this is going to be a great series, and I definitely would like to have more of you on. If you have a certain pantheon, we can start a series, within all of our channels and do some great in-depth pantheon work. I just didn't want to get downtrodden and stuck in pantheons, because we could do this for weeks. And we have a lot more to do pantheons wise. Initiation class wise, but I would love to keep this kind of series going between, the groups of us. That would be great. And so I will continue to, if you guys reach out, I will interview any of you that do work with different pantheons. I would love to talk about different pantheons and do a series, and we can do it on your channels or our channels or whatever. I think that would be great. Months at least. Exactly. For sure. Because there's so much in-depth information.
Yep.
I could make an entire YouTube channel just off retelling the Norse Pantheon, Norse myths alone, much less Greek and Roman.
Oh yeah. And I've got all of my social media links and accounts and information are all on my About page on here. Anyone is welcome to add me, find me, friend me, ask me questions. I am always available.
Absolutely. And I believe, I haven't really looked at the YouTube part, but I hopefully Lea Lynn, Sarana, and Pat's channel are all linked down below in the information section, because I did put it in there.
We're all chatting in the chat too, so.
Awesome. Perfect. Any other questions?
Ooh,
and yes, our links are in the box.
What's that, Pat?
Shauna said at some point she would be willing to come on and talk about Goddess Inanna. Not today, of course.
Right, yeah.
That would be another great one if we wanted to sort of break off and talk about some of the more popular deities.
Yes, absolutely. And I know I feel so bad. I what was it, like 6 months ago or something? I started a Gods and Goddesses series, which I did one of, and then I got on to 8 million other things as usual. That's why you call me Mama Squirrel. But I have I have notes on a whole bunch of videos that I plan on eventually doing. So
yep.
I have a whole bunch of ideas and stuff. But again, I definitely would love to interview people. If you work with a certain deity and you know a lot of information about that deity and you want to come on, that would be great.
Yeah.
All right. Freya, yep. Which I know.
Cherrybug, what about her?
You got 2 people here that know her and work with her. Cherrybug. Cherrybug's asking about Freya. You are more than welcome to reach out to either one of us.
I'm trying to see, Lady Blind Wolf. I think I missed the first part of your thought process here, but the last part of the thought, unless this was it and I'm just not computing, but it says, but what about more on I assume that was going to mean adversarial magic, which I will touch on a little bit, but I don't adversarial, if you're talking about like the H word, hexes and stuff like that, I don't teach that. If that is something that you're interested in, I can give suggestions on where to go to look at that. And I certainly, I've said many times before, I have done a few hexes in my life, although I treat it very seriously, and I don't do that all the time. And I can give you resources and some ideas and stuff. It's just not, because that's not what I want to focus on. And that's that I don't really go into it, because for one thing, I think some people, and not any of you, I'm not saying any of you in particular, but some people start down this path, particularly to hex people, or to, because they have a grudge against someone, and they think, well, I'm just going to learn how to hex them, and you're not really serious. If that's what you've come to this path for, you've come to the wrong place, because that's not really what we're about. Not that we can't get to be about that if you cross us in the wrong, very serious way, but it's not something that I try to focus on.
If we could touch on Greek and Hellenic Pantheon.
Yeah, I think we can touch on the Greek and Hellenic pantheons.
I mean, I don't personally know a whole lot. I know the names, but I don't know many of the tales, but I do have a book that has some of them.
Yeah.
Well, I have one of their in Greek myth that I have quick access to, if you want to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm up for it. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. Peter came home, so I'm seeing he hasn't come in Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely will. And I will tell you, Maya, make sure that you look at the notes from last week's not last week's, Wednesday's video, because Dylan had given me a bunch of good notes on the Hellenic. I don't know why I keep doing that. That's another one that I would like to do some more in-depth kind of work on outside of the initiation part of the class too.
We need to have Dylan just get on with us for one of these so he can talk about Hellenic path.
I know. I was trying to talk him into it. He wants to do some videos on his own channel, which I think is awesome. And please, I know it. So get on there and do them. Or
hey, here we go. And now, if you want more, come to my channel.
Exactly. Or Dylan, absolutely. If you come on with us and let us interview you on some of it, then we'll post your channel and get you some more subscribers. So when you do talk about it, you got a lot of people looking at it. Hint, hint.
Just to give you guys an idea, I looked at the views from Wednesday's video on Mama's channel. When Mama got done, she had 410 views on that one video alone. So if you're wanting to work on doing something like that, this would be the perfect way. Come on with Mama, post your link, chat in the group like I'm doing. I'm sitting here on my phone, but the computer is right here. That's how I'm chatting with everyone. That way, anybody who sees me on the screen and thinks, oh, really, I'm interested, they can just click on my name and go there. The perfect idea and the perfect way to help grow your channel. I mean, since I've started coming on and doing these with Mama, I've gone up. I mean, I only have 300 subs, but still, before I only had like 100, 150.
Mm-hmm. And you guys should know me by now that that's part of why I do this. I have no, I don't know how to put this. I don't want all the viewers for myself. I think that's bullshit. I like to grow everybody. Let's all learn together. I think that's great. I would rather, make this a bigger coalition, as big as we can get it. I want everybody to know about all this. So, let's grow your channels too. I love it. There's enough room for all of us. And I'll help you grow it as best I can.
Exactly.
Yes, I gained a lot of my subscribers from Mama Squirrel. This is where I sort of got my start on this platform.
Exactly.
That's right. Enough nuts for every squirrel. That's right. Exactly. Now, Lea Lynn, I'm going to let you do your mythology. Remind me, I want to just get back to, I don't know how to say this quickly, but I want you guys to remind me before we go to mention what this path isn't. Okay, go.
All right. So there was a beautiful princess. Her name was Psyche. She wasn't just beautiful. She was so beautiful as to be called more beautiful than Aphrodite. And if you've read any of the other Greek myths, you know this is the worst compliment you could ever receive from anyone, ever. So Aphrodite gets jealous, of course, and causes an oracle to tell Psyche that she will fall in love with a hideous beast. Aphrodite summons her son Eros to have him go and prick her with one of his arrows to make her fall in love with said beast. So Eros goes and tries to do what he's told, but when he lays eyes on the beautiful princess, he's so surprised that he stabs himself with one of his own arrows and falls desperately in love with her. So yeah, back to Psyche for a second. She's not only super gorgeous, she's also super lonely. Turns out being unattainably beautiful tends to scare all the men away. So Psyche goes to the oracle and asks if she'll ever find true love. The oracle tells her, yes, she will. But as per Aphrodite's previously mentioned curse, she'll fall in love with a horrible monster that even the gods are afraid of. So Psyche is taken to the top of a big scary cliff to wait for her monster boyfriend. Zephyr, the west wind, comes and carries her away to an opulent palace that belongs to said monster boyfriend. Turns out he's invisible and tells her that he will make sure she has everything she could ever need or want, but she can never see him, not even when they sleep together. Psyche is actually completely fine with this whole arrangement, and everything is great for a while. Then her two sisters come to visit, and everything goes to shit. The sisters are jealous of her luxurious life and decide to convince Psyche that she should find out if her invisible boyfriend is actually a monster or not. And if he is, kill him before she can kill her, or he can hit and kill her. So Psyche sneaks into her monster boyfriend's bedroom with a lantern and a knife to maybe kill him with. As soon as the light touches him, she sees that her monster boyfriend is actually a gorgeous Olympian god. Surprised by his beauty, everyone say it together now. She accidentally pricks herself with one of Eros's arrows. Even the oil in her lamp thinks Eros is super hot and splashes itself to get a little closer to him. So Eros wakes up because, ow, hot oil on his skin, and flies off because he's been betrayed. He flies back to Aphrodite to have a cry and nurse his minor burn. Aphrodite is extra pissed now, so he whooshes herself over to Psyche and tells her that if she wants her beloved back, she needs to accomplish 4 tasks. Aphrodite throws some mixed assortment of grains on the ground and tells Psyche that she has to sort them out, put by type, and has 1 day to do it in. Oh, and Psyche is basically the original Disney princess, so while she sits there crying about how much BS this is, some ants come and sort the grains for her. Aphrodite makes the second task way worse by telling Psyche to go shear some sun sheep. The local water spirit comes and tells Psyche that if she's trying to get the wool, well, she should just get it off the brush instead, because if she tries to rip a chunk off of a sheep, they'll eat her. So Psyche, he pulls the wool off the brush instead and takes it to Aphrodite. Now Aphrodite is even more pissed off. So Aphrodite sends Psyche to get some water from the river Styx, which is a small problem because, underworld, heavily guarded. Hades isn't really known for being good with people just taking things out of his domain. But Zeus steps in and helps her out by sending an eagle to get the water for her. I mentioned the bit about original Disney princess. So last and definitely not least, Aphrodite sends Psyche all the way into the underworld to ask Persephone to put some of her beauty in a box so Aphrodite can freshen up with it. By the way, Eros is all healed by now and forgave Psyche ages ago, but his mom won't let him stop this absolute shit show. Who on with the trek into the underworld. So Persephone does something to the box and gives it back to Psyche, but warns her not to open it. Just give it directly back to Aphrodite. You don't need to know what's inside. So Psyche leaves the underworld with the box. It's when she realizes that if the box is full of pure beauty, and she's about to finally best Aphrodite and get her lover back, she might want to freshen up a bit. Surely it couldn't hurt to take a little beauty for herself. Turns out Persephone was thinking a little more like her husband and didn't put beauty in the box at all. Instead, she put death in there.
Ding, ding, ding. Shocker.
So Psyche, he dies, but Eros escapes from his mother's cage and comes to save her. He fixes the whole being dead thing and flies Psyche up to Mount Olympus to get Zeus to make her immortal. And then they get married.
Yepper. Gotta love those gods and goddesses. Boy, they're all so wonderfully transparent.
Where smart asses come from.
Yeah. Original, yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Did we get any more questions before I close with my rant on what it isn't?
I haven't seen any. I've just been seeing comments and chit chat.
Beautiful. Okay, so I just wanted to touch on because this is self-dedication and initiation, I wanted to touch really quickly on what this path is not. Because I think that's just as important as what this path is. And I wanted to talk just briefly. It is not a magic fix-it cure. It is not a book of spells that you can open up and read and make a couple potions and fix your life. It is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It is not a, I'm going to read a book and become the greatest witch in the world and fix everything that is going wrong in my life. Not any of those things. It is work, and it is research, and it is trial and error, and it is wonderful. I adore this path. But I adore this path because I don't put expectations on the path itself. The path for me is what I believe to be true. And what my goal is, which I've said lots and lots and lots of times, is to teach as many people as I can to connect with each other and to the universe in whatever way I can teach them. And then you take that from there and decide what direction your path goes in. And that involves trial and error and falling on your face and making mistakes and trying things out that don't work out. And all of that is awesome and part of your growth and part of your path, because when you find stuff that doesn't work for you, you know, I don't want to go into that direction. I want to try a different direction. When you find a god or goddess and you think, oh, you know what, I'm going to totally connect with this god or goddess, and then you ask them to connect with you and they smack you in the face, you know, it's not that one. I'm going to try a different one. I just want to be really clear that I am not here to tell you how to walk your path, which I know if you know me and you've been watching me, you know my motto is if it works for you, it works. And that's not something I just say. That's something I believe wholeheartedly. Every single thing that I do, you will hear me say, well, I don't know. Did it feel like that was right for you? And that doesn't mean I'm not here to give you suggestions. I will give you suggestions. I will give you examples. I will help you write a spell if you really want a spell work kind of thing. But it is for you to do the work to find your way in this path. Because if I give you a path, it's not going to be yours. It's going to be mine. And your path is not going to be the same as mine at all. No way in hell is your path going to be exactly the same as what I walk. And so I am here to encourage you. I am here to teach you as much knowledge as I can pull from my brain to give to you. I'm here to give you examples of stuff that I know has worked for me or worked for other people. I am here to try to teach you to connect to the energies that are out there so that you can figure out what direction you can go in. But I am not here to tell you every step of your path. And I will tell you too that this path doesn't automatically change who you are. When you begin to walk this path, it's really more about incorporating the connections that you feel in the universe into your everyday walk, into your job, into your waking up and taking a shower in the morning, into your relationship with your peers, with your loved ones, with your family. Whether they know about the path or not is irrelevant. You will begin to bring what you believe and the fact that you have these connections. You will bring that into every relationship that you have, be it with human beings or trees or water or grass or the moon or the stars or your television set. And that should be the goal, is to enhance your everyday walk with the belief system that you are incorporating into your life. Does that make sense? Hopefully. I am here to answer questions. I love to answer questions, but I'm not here to give you a step-by-step of this is how to become a witch 101. Because that's your figuring out to do.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I know I sound like a broken record on my channel saying it all the time. I can't teach you how to do it. I can't tell you my path and you walk my path because it's mine. I can't tell you how to make your book of shadows perfect because it is all I can do is tell you what I did to make my book. And my book is mine and it's so completely mine. And I can't tell you how to connect with my deities because my deities aren't going to be your deities.
Yep.
Right. I'm almost
Just
done.
like I just said in the chat, remember there is a line and it is not a fine line at all. There is a difference between guidance and order. Only you can choose your path.
That's right. That's right.
And that is the thing that personally I'm here for on this platform too, is to talk to other people on this path who are walking their path. They're not walking in the same path I am, but they're walking a similar one, and they can walk beside me, and we can talk about it, and we can learn from each other.
That's right. That's right. All right, guys. And with that, I thank you all for coming on. Sarana, thank you for coming on with us. And Lea Lynn and Pat, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your knowledge with us. And I do think we will continue this series in another way, just not through the initiation portion of this. I have started to figure out what we're going to do next week already. And we're getting down to the wire. So we'll see. We may... I think we're still going to be on track for the initiations, but I'll decide more next week. So yay. I love you guys. And click the like button and do your homework. And
do your homework.
Thank you all for being here.
Yay!
And good night, all. We love you.
Bye-bye, everyone.